how do you, if at all, correlate the targeted individual program with, say, 9/11?
Well, everything is connected. It's difficult when people don't realize that, and they look around the world and they see all these things happening that they don't want to happen, but they don't understand why they're happening. And it's all kind of appears random. And why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why are they doing that? When actually it's all connected. And, you know, there's a couple of things that you can get across that kind of bring it all together. First of all, the phrase that I've been using for years and years now, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you don't know what the outcome is, i.e. where humanity is being taken, then it can look random. Everything that happens can be unexplainable in terms of why it's happening. But once you know where we're being taken, daily events suddenly become very clear in terms of their stepping stones to that outcome. And the outcome is planned to be a global dystopia. I've been saying this for so many decades, a global dystopia with a world government that would not in the end be elected. It would be technocratic. It would be bureaucrats and technocrats, tech people, medical experts, etc., who will be appointed without any say from the people. And that world government operating through a world army, which is the idea in the end, would impose its will on the entire population that wouldn't by then be countries. They'd just be powerless little regions. Countries would be long gone. That's the plan, plus endless other things like the big one, which is everything's controlled by artificial intelligence, which means that whoever controls artificial intelligence can control the world from a central point even. And the next question is why they're doing it. Well, that's a big question we can get into later maybe. But it's like asking a question on one level, why do psychopaths do what psychopaths do? And the answer is because they're psychopaths. But there are other reasons for it too. And thirdly, how do they do it? And that was the question that I asked when I really started on this in 1990. How do they do it? That was my interest. I could see pretty quickly that they were doing it as the plan for the dystopia, but how were they doing it? And it was very clear from early on that people that appeared to be in power, like presidents, prime ministers, weren't in power at all. The real power was in the shadows, working through them. You had here today, gone tomorrow politicians coming and going. They do all the time. But this hidden power is always there, whoever's supposedly in power. And I started to piece together how it all worked. And it's a very simple structure. And it has to be, because if it gets too complex, then it falls apart. And it's, if you imagine a spider's web all over the world, and in the center of the spider's web is the spider. Now, the spider is that hidden power from which this agenda is coming. The strands in the spider's web immediately around the spider are the most exclusive secret societies. And people involved at that level will rarely, if ever, be in the public arena. And then you come out from that spider center and you're meeting all the secret societies that we do know about. There's endless numbers. The Freemasons, the inner core, that is. The the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the inner core of the Jesuit order, and so on. In America, you've got secret societies more specific, like the Skull and Bones Society at just outside of Yale University. And as you come out from the spider through that hidden level of secret societies that we know about, eventually you meet what I call the cusp. This is the point in the web where the hidden meets the seen. And at this point, you have cusp organizations whose role it is to take the agenda coming out from the spider and through the hidden and to play it out in the world of the seen through governments, government agencies, Silicon Valley, the banking system, World Health Organization, and so on, big pharma. And these cusp organizations include the World Economic Forum. They include the Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, the Club of Rome, which was created in 1968 to specifically use environmental concerns to justify dystopia, which is where the whole global warming thing originally came from. And you also got in this cusp group this enormous number of think tanks and non-governmental organizations, NGOs, not least funded by people like George Soros. And their role collectively is to take this agenda and play it out as government policy and as corporation policy and Silicon Valley policy and so on. And so when you get out into the arena, the arena that we see, daily life, things start to look differently if you know this structure is in place. For instance, when the World Health Organization gave us the official version of, quote, COVID, the Silicon Valley corporations, the social media corporations, announced at the start that they were going to censor anyone that challenged that narrative, which is bizarre. You would think, if this is supposed to be a town square and a place where people's opinions are shared, but when you realize that this structure is in place, you start to see why it's happening and how it's happening. The World Health Organization was created, not least through the Rockefeller family in 1948, to eventually, this was the plan from the start, control global health policy from under one roof. This is what this World Health Organization treaty is all about now, where they're trying to do exactly that. And Silicon Valley corporations, if you look at your Facebooks and your Googles that own YouTube, etc., you'll find the Pentagon through the technological development arm of the Pentagon, the DARPA, and the CIA through its technological development operation, IQT or InQtel, were very much involved in the creation of these corporations. And so what you have is one element of this, what I call global cult web agenda, which is the World Health Organization, being defended from exposure and having its narrative defended from exposure and challenged by another part of the web, which is the Silicon Valley corporations. You then have the pharmaceutical cartel that produced the fake vaccines, and they were created again. Initially, the whole scalpel and drug medical domination came out of the Rockefeller family and people like J.D. Rockefeller, the oil tycoon. And they would go to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and the Food and Drug Administration. They would go to the MHRA equivalent in Britain, and they would ask for permission to roll out a fake vaccine. It's not even a vaccine under previous criteria, having done no trials. And the pathetic trials they did were pretty disastrous. So what you would think, as with the Silicon Valley corporations, is that these regulatory agencies, who's there supposedly to protect the people from big pharma, would say, "You're having a laugh, mate. There's no way we're giving you permission to roll this out. What? Ridiculous." But they did. And they
Well,
did, as it went down the ages to small babies, little babies, they gave them permission. And you ask, if you don't know about the structure, what the heck's going on? Why would they do that? But the CDC and the FDA and the MHRA, etc., and their equivalent around the world, are owned by this cult. They're controlled by this cult. Their appointees are dictated by this cult. And therefore, what you had with the fake vaccine was the pharmaceutical cartel through Pfizer and Moderna, who are cult operative operations, going to cult operative operations in the regulatory agencies and asking for permission. So what you had was one element of this global cult giving permission to another element of the global cult to play out an agenda of the global cult, which is the fake vaccine. So once you start to realize this structure exists and where we're being taken, suddenly the world opens up and you can start to see why things happen as they do.
Are you aware of, for example, self-assembling nanotechnology that has been included in any of these vaccines? As, for example, Dr. Baer identified in Abbott Dental Anesthetics self-assembling chips in that substance.
Oh, yes. I've been on that case from the start. I mean, in April 2020, I said that the whole COVID thing is a hoax. I was kicked off social media, mainstream social media immediately, and YouTube. I said at the time in April 2020, this is really about providing an excuse to get a vaccine into people. And by the end of 2020, that had started, and it had been able to be rolled out so fast because it already existed. And so the question is why? What was in it? And there's a group, a research organization, a research group in Spain called La Quinta Columna. And they were the first people to announce from their research into the vial content, vial on every spelling of the word, that it contained graphene. And very recently, like a few weeks ago, well, maybe 6 weeks ago now, they contacted me out of the blue and asked if I would do a Zoom call with them, which was recorded. You can see it on davidicke.com, to discuss their findings, because they had found that this content of the vial fitted exactly what I'd said in the spring of 2020 about, quote, COVID. And so I did the call, and there's a guy called Delgado, Ricardo Delgado, who's a really great researcher. And he told me what they'd found. And this is correlated, as you point out, by the big microscope pictures, really blown up pictures of blood from vaccinated people, fake vaccinated people, which shows this self-replicating technology. And what he was saying about graphene, which I'd written about in some books before as well, is that it's a superconductor of electricity and electromagnetism. That it, once in the body, it can get into the brain, it can get all over. And what it does, he said, is amplify inside the body the power of electromagnetic fields. And for a long, long time now, way back before COVID, I was pointing out that the plan was to connect the human brain, human perception, to this cloud. in fact, via AI. In other words, AI is connected to the human brain. People like Musk are talking about this in a certain way, take a bit of the skull away and stick a big implant in. But actually, he's selling the concept. That's his job. But the real way they're doing it is nanotechnology in things like the fake vaccines. So the idea was that you put this stuff into people, it self-replicates, it starts to enter the brain because of various techniques they've used. It can breach the so-called blood-brain barrier, which is supposed to protect the brain from toxins. And the idea is that it starts interacting with this cloud, the cloud that people like Elon Musk, he's the leader with SpaceX, are creating all over the world with low orbit satellites. Amazon's doing the same, and others too, but SpaceX is the leader by far. And also the towers in urban areas putting out 5G and stuff. It's creating this cloud. And there was a guy a few years ago now called Ray Kurzweil. He's a so-called futurist executive at Google. And he said that by 2030, people would be connected to artificial intelligence. Their brains would be connected to artificial intelligence. And in his words, once that connection was made, artificial intelligence would do more and more of human thinking until human thinking was negligible. They're his words, not mine. And we're moving that way in the sense of the clouds being created. I mean, Musk and SpaceX have got permission for something like 12,000 low orbit satellites, and they have from the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and they have applications in for another 30,000. And basically what this is going to do with these other companies like Amazon is create basically an electromagnetic sub-reality powering this electromagnetic field, 5G, 6G, 7G to come. And then humans are attached to it. Their body, brains are attached to it. And that's what the plan is. And crucial to that was this fake vaccine rollout to allow that to happen. And graphene is the almost perfect substance for this body-brain cloud interaction. And so it's like, I hear people focusing in the alternative media. They're focusing on, Donald Trump and focusing on Elon Musk, irony of ironies. But really, it's massively bigger than that. And we need to understand that. And when you're talking about Trump, who was it that claimed credit for the fake vaccine rollout in America, Operation Warp Speed? It was Trump. And so it's very important that we're dispassionate and don't get into hero worship and looking for saviors, and start doing our own research and making our own decisions based on that.
Let me ask you, in terms of you as I read about you being banned from traveling around Europe or outside of the UK. Has that changed in any way? And did you ever find out why it was?
Well, I can tell you what they claimed, which was nonsense. But the idea was that they wanted to use any excuse to stop me moving. So at this current time, as I sit here, I'm banned from something like 29 European countries, plus Australia. I've been banned from Australia since 2019. And I'm probably banned from a lot more countries if I try to get in them, possibly even the United States, which can use the European system to decide if someone can come in or not. Basically, what happens in Europe, it's ludicrous, but you see, if you want to centrally control everything, then you have to create groupings. if, for instance, there wasn't a border grouping in Europe, then I would have been banned from the Netherlands, which is where this came from. And to ban me from every other country, they would have to go to every other country and justify it. But they have in Europe something called the Schengen system, whereby it is a group of countries, I think it's 29 now. And if you're banned from entering one, you're banned from entering all of them. This is how the grouping works and why they do it. And so without any evidence whatsoever and no decision made by anybody in the 28 other countries, I'm banned from them because of what they've decided in the Netherlands. And this is how it came about. I was invited by a group of people in the Netherlands, most notably a Jewish guy, a Jewish friend of mine, a good friend of mine now, called Mordecai, to just go into Amsterdam and speak at a peace rally. This was October 2022. And okay, I agreed, of course. And all hell broke loose. The Dutch media went hysterical. The Dutch government went hysterical and started hurling accusations at me that were absolutely extraordinary, being anti-Semitic and what have you. And also, it's kind of funny, you know, how these different groups, you know, if you're pursuing the truth and you're pursuing it by seeking evidence and tangible facts, then you're not just going to upset one group, you're going to upset lots, because they all have their individual belief system that's based on things that aren't true. So in the end, when I was banned from the Netherlands, thus 29 now European countries, I had Jewish organizations opposing my entry. I had the Dutch government opposing my entry. I had Extinction Rebellion opposing my entry because I was challenging the whole nonsense of human-caused climate change. And so it went on, and I kind of united these groups together. But what I do is I take it as a compliment. You know, if you're not over the target, then they don't think you're a problem. And you know, to ban someone, I've not worked for any organization. I'm not part of any political movement. God help us. I'm just me. And to ban me from 29 European countries is so over the top. It tells you something. And,
well, because it's danger. The danger of truth is the danger of ideas. You know, it's not so much as munitions, rather your verb. You know, your truth.
yeah,
And
well, that's an important point, because if you look at the mathematical dynamics between those that are driving this dystopian agenda and the population they're driving it to, the difference in numbers is absolutely fantastic. It's laughable. You know, at the core of this cult, you'd probably get them into a single room. And most of this cult, like secret societies in general, is fiercely compartmentalized. So you only know or allowed to know what you need to know to contribute to the cult's agenda without even knowing at the lower levels there is a cult agenda. And so this compartmentalization means that enormous numbers of people are every day contributing to unfolding this dystopian nightmare without realizing that's what they're doing, or without realizing that's the reason they're doing it. So you've got this tremendous discrepancy between the people doing it in numbers and the people having it done to them. So when you've got 8 billion people in the world, apparently, and you can get the core of the cult in a single room, there's a real problem here. You can't impose your will physically. You can do that in small areas by getting the army out or the law enforcement. But even then, if enough people say no, the number dynamic again is so fantastic, it would be impossible for them to do it. But you can do it in small areas. But globally, of course, 8 billion people can't be dictated to by a handful. It's just simple mathematics. So how do they do it? Well, they do it by controlling perception. And you know, this is the key to it all. They have to manipulate our sense of reality, our perception of reality, in whether it's an event or reality in general, because we behave as we do because we perceive as we do. People do things because they see the world and see an event in a certain way. It's perceptions that drive everything. And this cult knows that, and it's expert at manipulating perception, thus manipulating the behavior that comes from that. If you look at COVID, there's no way that the number of people involved in imposing lockdowns could have imposed them if the population in enough numbers had said, we're not doing it.
Certainly.
It's just not possible. And, you know, I'll give you an example. The British government announced that everybody in our health system, called the National Health Service, it's not really a health system, would be fired, lose their jobs, if they didn't have the fake vaccine. And
only in government or private enterprise also?
Yeah, but I mean, but in this case, it was the government.
Okay.
And so they gave a date that if you weren't fake vaccinated by then, you were going to lose your job in the health system. Now, lots of people therefore got jabbed when they didn't want to be, because they didn't want to lose their jobs. This was the key. So many people didn't, but by the time the deadline came, if they had fired all those that wouldn't have it, then the national health system would have collapsed overnight. And so what did the government do? It had no choice. It dropped the mandate. And by the time it dropped the mandate, lots of people in the health care system had the jab because they thought the mandate was coming. And it just shows you where the real power is, if only we would use it instead of just conforming and taking what we're told without question. We have the power, but it's using it. And this is why divide and rule is so important. Divide left from right, religion from religion, culture from culture. You have to do that if there's a few of you, because you need your target population fighting each other, in conflict with each other, so that they're too busy fighting each other to actually look up and see that all of them have strings attached, and the hands of the strings are that are holding the strings are the same hands. This is how the whole thing works. It's a confidence trick.
Well, and that's where this program, heinous program, comes in, because there are some of us that refuse to follow the sheep, that become whistleblowers, that fight corruption, for example, and we are placed in this targeted individual program, which is a special access program, as I'm assuming you know,
Yeah.
where people are tortured. We have people from Britain that are, for example, they get the patented voice to skull torture, and there's a young man I have very dear to my heart because the government forces him to get by every 2 weeks a shot for schizophrenia, calling him crazy when we all know it's not crazy. It's a torture tactic perpetrated upon him because he is a targeted individual. And so that's what that divide and conquer is also, there's the other part, and it is the people that have been targeted just because they don't want to go with the narrative and they refuse to follow orders. The people that didn't get vaccinated, the people that created, at least in the United States, awareness about how terrible this vaccine was, and that's one of the consequences of not following. Not everybody is a sheep, but there is also that a part of the madness.
Yeah, and this is a key part of the perception manipulation. What you do is you set a norm, what people perceive as normal. And the norm can change. I mean, it was normal to openly sacrifice people once, but it's not anymore. They do it secretly. And so the norm changes. But each era has a norm. And what is normal? It's only what we normally experience and normally see. That's normal. And this normal becomes a prison cell for the mind, because anything outside the normal is considered, in these days, a conspiracy theory, a term that came out of the CIA in the 60s, by the way. And it's immediately kind of waved away because it's not normal. And, I've been saying for decades that one of the key ways that this cult limits human perception is by limiting the sense of the possible. If you can squeeze the sense of the possible, then when people come along, like what you're describing, and say, this is happening to me or this is happening to others, that is so far out of people's sense of the possible and sense of what people would do to others that they can't grasp it. So immediately it's dismissed as ridiculous. And, it's like there's a great quote that goes words to the effect of, we should not confuse the limits of possibility with the limits of our own mind. And that's what's happening all the time. And so someone comes along and says they're being electromagnetically targeted by various energy weapons. And immediately, oh, no, that's way outside of my normal. But at the same time, you hear them say, no, they wouldn't do that. No one would do that. Because they're not. One of the great human diseases is naivety. And it's almost an almost childlike naivety among so many people. They'd never do that. Well, they are doing it. And just look around and you'll see the capacity for people to do things like that. So because generally, and I'm glad, people don't experience extreme psychopaths and psychopathy in their own lives, they use their own lives as a norm from which to judge possibility. But it's not like that. Look what's happening in Gaza now, with kids being starved to death, with
Slaughtered.
people, tens of thousands being bombed being killed from bombing from the sky and so on. Now, I mean, is anyone really telling me that a mentality that would do that would not target people considered a problem with energy weapons. Of course they would. Not only would they do it, they'd love it. It would be a bit of fun for them, because this mentality, consciousness behind this cult is satanic. Everything it does is an inversion of life. And if you look at the word evil, it's the word live written backwards, which is very appropriate because this cult inverts everything. This is why Satanism inverts its symbols. This is why you have the inverted cross. This is why you have the inverted pentagram. Everything's inverted. That's why the world is upside down. The way the world should be, if we want a peaceful, loving interaction, is the opposite of what we have. Because we have an inverted society, because it's actually run and controlled by inverted consciousness. And that inversion is so deep, especially at the core, that there are no limits to what it will do. Because one of the things I understood very early on in the 1990s is that these people have no empathy and no compassion. If you look at the definitions, the official definition of psychopath through something called the Hare test, Hare, named after the guy who developed it, there's a list of traits, and if you have enough of them, you are considered officially a psychopath. And the top two traits are no compassion and no empathy being at the top. And so what that means is that if we were doing to people, collectively and individually, what this cult is doing, it would destroy us, because our emotional consequence through empathy and compassion would be annihilated. But if you don't have those emotional consequences, then you have no consequences for whatever you do, no matter how extreme, no matter how grotesque. I mean, we're having child abuse, we're having child sexual abuse, physical abuse in child pedophile rings. We're having babies born in captivity, called, through to mothers called breeders by the Satanists, who are held in captivity to keep producing children one after the other, which are then used in sacrifice.
Well, in this context,
and so there is the point I'm making, to finish, is there is no limit to the horror that this mentality will commit, and thus we have to open our minds to what is what we're dealing with, and not naively wave it away because it's outside of our limit of possibility.
well, along these lines, I don't know if you're aware, for example, the voice to skull torture is done to children as young as 3 years old. I have 7-year-olds that talk about the bad men that talk to her, and they implant very violent sexual and violent dreams on children. And I think this is beyond being a psychopath. I think this is it's just like you say, it's sheer evil. Because it's I cannot comprehend who would do that, not only to a child, but a child that is completely unrelated to you.
Yeah, but there are other levels to this, which again expand our understanding of what's behind it. In the early 1990s, I started uncovering this global cult web and how it worked. And by 1996, because of the synchronicity of my life and people I met and what have you, I started to realize that there was a non-human element to this. And eventually, just after the turn of the millennium, I realized that actually the reality we're experiencing is actually a simulation. It's a simulated reality. It's a very advanced version of a virtual reality quote game. And it's hijacked our perception of reality right down to the point of our perception of the world we're living in. So when you think, and again, this sort of stuff should be taught to children at the earliest age that they can grasp it. So they have from that stage an understanding of something of the reality they're experiencing. They need to be told that when they look through their eyes, they can only see a tiny, tiny band of frequency. It's ridiculous. It's called visible light. It's insanely narrow, the band of frequency. So when we look at the world that we think we're perceiving, we think that we're looking and seeing everything in the space that we're looking at, but we're not. We're seeing a tiny band of frequency. Infinity exists in the space that we're looking at, but we can't see it because the body decoding system, I would call it, of the biological computer, is incapable of decoding outside of visible light in terms of a visual reality. And if you think that, according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically our reality in its basic totality, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in all its forms, and visible light is a smear of the 0.005%, we're basically blind. And so in the same space that we are experiencing this reality are all the other realities, and we're not aware of them. But there is a particular reality, band of frequency, in esoteric terms, they call it the astral dimension, which is very, very close, especially at its lower levels, is very, very close to this one. It's not close enough that it enters visible light, but it's very, very close. We can feel it. So, for instance, if you go into a place where there's been a lot of negative things, maybe a house or whatever, a building, you'll go, oh, dear, it's horrible in here. Oh, my goodness. God, I don't feel happy in here. I don't feel comfortable. That's because this astral dimension, lower levels, which interpenetrates this one, is where the so-called demonic exists. And so it's what I find interesting, what I'm always doing when I'm researching, is I'm looking for patterns, not patterns of disagreement, patterns of agreement. And it's amazing if you do that, how much agreement there is between groups and beliefs that apparently are opposing each other. So I looked at Christianity, and they talk about demons. They talk about Satan, the devil, but they talk about demons. And what are demons? They operate outside of human sight. Who is Satan? Operates outside of human sight. Then you look at Islam, which is supposed to be very different from Christianity, but there are areas of agreement. They talk about shaitan and the jinn. And what are they? They are entities, forces that operate and manipulate human society, like the demons, the demonic and the satanic, outside of human sight. You look at the Gnostic belief system, and they talk about Yaldabaoth, which is their version of Satan, Shaitan. And they talk about archons, which is Greek, ancient Greek for rulers. And they're the demons and the jinn of the two religions. And so it goes on. You look at the native cultures around the world. I've spoken to a lot of people in those different cultures. I've been, until I started to get banned, I've been to 60 odd countries researching this. And they have the same basic concept of a hidden force that's manipulating human society. And long story short, it became clear to me that this global cult, which manifests as people like Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates and such like, and the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and these cult families, they are actually operating in the arena, within the frequency band of visible light, to push an agenda that's being orchestrated outside of the human frequency band. And this force is the spider. That's where it's coming from. And when you study the demonic and you see the scale of reverse of live, evil, that you're dealing with, suddenly what happens in this world starts to make absolute sense of why they do it and why it's so extreme. People like Gates and Schwab and Soros and Rockefellers, Rothschilds, all these people, they are gophers. They may seem important and very rich within the reality that we experience, but they're still gophers. And I tell you, from 35 years of research now, they are terrified of this demonic force in the astral dimension. And when people, and it's one of the things that happened to me, is I started to realize in the 1990s, mid 1990s, that these rich and famous people in politics and corporations and what have you, they were taking part in satanic rituals, sacrifice rituals. And you're like, what? Why would you do that? And then I started looking into what we call history. And you see, of course, that human sacrifice rituals, offerings to the gods, were part of life and done openly. And you think, well, why are they were doing it then, all right, but why are they still doing it? And what you realize is the gods that they were doing their offerings to, and the gods to which these rich and famous people today are doing their rituals to, are the same gods. They are these astral demons. And when you look around the world at pantheons of gods, like the Greek pantheon and the Hindu pantheon and all these others, you find that almost every society and culture had its pantheon of gods. But they're these demonic gods. That's what they're doing sacrifices to. And then you think, well, what do the gods get out of a human sacrifice? And you then start to realize, I've documented this in my books in great detail, that these demonic entities just outside of human sight in this astral dimension, lower level of it, are feeding off low vibrational human thought and emotion, perception. So why low vibrational? Because these entities are in an extraordinarily low vibrational state because of their state of being. Science has long established that every time we think and every time we feel emotion, we are generating electromagnetic frequencies that relate to the nature of the thought and the emotion. So love and joy are very, and peace are very high, fast frequencies. That's why when we're in a state of love and happiness and joy, we say, oh, I feel so light today. It's because there's the frequencies going through your energetic field are moving so swiftly and vibrating so swiftly that it does break up the density of your field. But if you are, and here's not just what I'm about to say, but what I'm about to say are the key ways on multiple levels that this cult manipulates humanity. If you're in a state of fear or depression or anxiety or resentment or regret or hatred, all these emotions that so many are manipulated into around the world, then they are low, slow frequencies, which bring your energetic field into a state of density because it's so low and slow, the vibes going through it. And that's when people say in those states, oh, I feel so heavy today. Because that's what it feels like, because you're in an energetic field of density. And so the idea to bring this round to the point of what I'm saying is that these entities are feeding off the only energetic band of frequency that they can absorb, which is low vibrational emotion, all based around the base emotion of fear. And so there is absolutely no interest whatsoever by these entities in having humanity in any other state than fear, anxiety, depression, worry, etc., hatred, conflict. And that's why the world is as it is. And this global cult that represents their interests in our band of frequency is constantly manipulating conflict, suffering, war, and these low vibrational states of response, emotional response, because it's producing this energy. Now, if we go back to the sacrifice, and the question I had a long time ago, so what do the gods get out of it then? Well, they get out of it the energy of terror that the sacrifice gives off when it's happening. If you look at someone who is in an emotional state, then you can see the emotion in their body language. You can see it in their face. You can see it in their responses, but you can't see the frequency. You can't see the frequency of what they're giving off. Maybe able to feel it, you can't see it. The reason you can't see it is because this emotion and mental, this mental projection, emotional projection that comes from the way when we think and feel, is going into this astral dimension. That's why we can't see it. And these entities are feeding off it. So what you have in a satanic ritual with these rich and famous people is, first of all, the ritual is designed to elicit maximum terror in the victim. And there's this feeding frenzy in the ritual, in the unseen levels of the ritual, where they're feeding off this energy. And in the, if you like, human level of the ritual, they're getting their high in another way. And one of the ways they're getting it is that in states of terror, while there's a frequency expression of that, there's also a bodily chemical expression of that, which is that adrenaline pours into the bloodstream. And this is where the whole idea of adrenochrome comes from. Because to these Satanists, and people would be shocked if they realize some of the people involved, it's a drug to them. This adrenaline infused blood is
for children, from children, right?
Yeah, from children. You see, you know the old saying where the ancients, they talked about sacrificing young virgins to the gods. Young virgins was just code for children. And I've been doing this a long time, and I've had a tremendous amount of experience and traveled enormously. And so I've met a lot of people and I've seen a lot of things. And if people realized how many children go missing in America alone every year, enormous numbers never to be seen again, they would be staggered. Because what happens is that people, and I do understand it, they relate the number of children going missing to the number of missing children stories on the news. or in the paper.
Exactly.
And that's nothing like the number of children that go missing. Now, as I've traveled around the world, like I spend a lot of time over the years with a fantastic man in South Africa, a Zulu shaman called Credo Mutwa. And he would tell me that people in the village, men in the village, were designated to patrol to protect the kids from abduction, because so many kids were going missing. And he believed that a lot of them were ending up in Madagascar as a kind of a central point of trafficking at that time anyway. And you've got all these kids crossing the southern border of the United States who come into the interior of the United States, and many of them will never be seen again. Well, what happens to them? I can tell you, too, in my research over the years, that a lot of children end up in the Middle East with the people like the so-called royal families of the Middle East. It's an enormous trade in trafficking children. So how can you traffic children to keep bringing these strands together if you have a smear of empathy or compassion? It's impossible. So you're dealing with people that don't have that. And, you know, I have spoken to people in many, many different countries, the United States being one of them big time, who have had direct experience of these pedophile rings and these satanic rings. And what goes on is it's almost indescribable in the depth of depravity that you are talking about. It's almost indescribable. And to most people, because of this norm and limit of the possible, it will be so far out, no one would ever do that. But they are doing it.
They don't want to hear it.
To grow up and realize that for the kids' sake alone.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, I think a lot of people don't want to, especially here in the United States, they don't want to look into the atrocity that is going on because it's too heinous. It's too evil. And people would rather, like you said before, they'd rather go on with their normal. I know.
Can I just say something there? That because, you know, that's a very interesting point that you raise. One of the things I've been saying over the decades is right from the early 90s, as I recall, is ignorance is bliss, but only for a while. And eventually it will catch up with you. So that's what's happening now. This response of don't want to talk about it, change the subject, is okay for a while, but eventually that force which you're trying to inform people about eventually knocks on their life and they become affected by it. And you remember the famous saying by the Pastor Niemöller in Nazi Germany, who said, was the effect of, first they came for the socialists and I was not a socialist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists. I was not a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the Jews and I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak out for me. That's the process that happens if you ignore and perceptually run away. That's what happens. And as this dystopia expands itself and impacts upon more and more lives in more and more detail, and my God, during 2024, you're going to see that expand. Eventually, it knocks on your door. And but often It's too late by then.
That's exactly what we're saying, because with this program, the intention was to roll it out to the population, have mind control of every single person, and particularly those that want to go against, the narrative, the norm. So, uh, that's what you're saying is what we're trying to warn people. It's today you're not affected, you think you're not affected, but tomorrow you may be. And then if we don't stop it now, there's no stopping it ever. I know I have to let you go, but I just wanted to I wanted to know what your idea is in terms of what is the best case scenario. How can we save Assange, Julian Assange, that his life has been, stolen from, so many years of his life, and do you think there is a not a happy ending, but a better situation for him soon?
Yeah, well, it can't be a happy ending, given in totality, given what he's experienced in the
Suffer.
years and years. See, this is a classic, whereby he, through WikiLeaks, revealed things that the system doesn't want revealed. And so, what are you going to do about it? Because he was in the public eye, and anything they would do to him would have to be done publicly. So what you have to do is try to discredit him. So out of nowhere comes this lady out of Sweden claiming sexual abuse and what have you. And the process began of extraditing him to Sweden. That was the goal. But he well knew that if he went to Sweden, he would then go to America because they'd extradite him to America. And so he refused, he challenged it. And eventually, of course, the woman went away and the Swedish extradition went away. But they still need to make a example of it. Because if someone is going to expose the system, and like what happened in Iraq as well, and again the empathy deleted, compassion deleted things that were done, then if one person does it and has no consequence, well, more people are going to do it. So we've got to nip this in the bud, as it were. And so they tried to then extradite him off to America as well. They had a president in Ecuador that was sympathetic. That's why he went in the Ecuadorian embassy. Then they replaced him with someone else who wasn't sympathetic, and we saw what happened then. And the British government is subordinate, like all these governments, to this global cult. It's not making its own decisions. And when this cult, through various channels, says you are going to extradite him, that invariably is what happens. And the only thing that can stop it is someone turns up, either a politician or a judge, who has the guts and the integrity to say this is a nonsense, it's not happening. But what you've got, and you'll see it, of course, in the United States, is you've got a judiciary that's basically corrupt. That's not to say that all judges are corrupt, not at all. But if you have a case that you absolutely need to win, then you'll make sure that one of your own is placed to oversee it as the judge. And so you get the decision that you want. This is why you get so many high profile, particularly political decisions that are so at odds with the evidence, and or the sentence or fine is so dramatically off the scale. It's because it's all orchestrated. And so we've now reached the point with Julian Assange where we're waiting for the decision from these two judges, one of whom at least has big connections into the intelligence community in Britain, MI6, etc., to make a decision on his extradition. And he's married, he's got kids, but of course none of that is taken into account because these people have no capacity for empathy and no capacity for compassion. And let us not forget this, that Donald Trump, hero of the people, had the opportunity at the end of his presidency to pardon both Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, but chose to do neither and instead pardoned a lot of absolute crooks, including the father of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And so, again, Britain has a population currently, it's getting bigger all the time because of the massive influx of illegal migrants, as everywhere else. And we, that's a whole new story, a whole nother story. It's actually part of it all. As a population of 67 million people. The people who are extraditing Julian Assange, if that's what the decision is, cannot cope with a fraction of that number not having it. I mean, if you had a couple of million people surrounding the jail or surrounding anywhere that they were seeking to move him through, would be impossible to do it. And the publicity of that would be so enormous that your justification of it would be examined in a way that for most people, even now, sadly, it's not been done before. So you can't move someone through to a state of out of a country if enough people won't have it. Now, of course, when the court case was heard recently, which we're waiting for the decision on, a large number of people were there, but nothing like the level that is necessary to make a difference.
To move their decision.
Make a difference, yeah. And so you have, I mean, if you had a million people constantly turning up and surrounding the jail, so no one could go in or out, well, that's making a massive statement that you're not having it. But of course, that doesn't happen, and we're in a situation now where he didn't turn up for the hearing, the extradition hearing, because apparently he was so ill. And you can understand why the guy his health would be devastated after what he's been through. And goodness knows what they're possibly doing to him as well. And none of this is taken into account because of the lack of compassion that we have. But all we can do is hope that some miracle happens, that these two judges decide to do the decent thing.
Yeah, but if he does not get extradited, I mean, he can't stay in jail forever either.
Well, the people that run America, like the people that run the United Kingdom, are so utterly frickin' evil that look what they've done to the January the 6th people. All you could charge those people with when you see the pictures is trespass. It's all you can do. But they've not. They've been charging them with heinous bloody crimes, putting them away for a long time. That's the level of evil that we're dealing with. These people are husbands and wives and fathers of kids, but these people couldn't care less. The thought of the suffering they're causing, they get off on it. Because a lot of these, I've talked here about this demonic, but this demonic is consciousness in the end. Everything's consciousness. And this consciousness comes into this world. you know, the a lot of the major, all the major players in this global cult will be demons, incarnate demons. They will be,
Yeah.
and you see that in how they react and how they respond. And the Julian Assange case is a perfect example of that. And see, you know, why do people do that? Why would they do that? Why would anyone do it? Because they're demons. That's why, and that's the mentality you're dealing with. Anyone think, you know, look at Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. Anyone think that what they've done, what they're planning to do, and what they're fronting up, and what Gates did during COVID, what he's doing in using his vast wealth to transform human society, buying up the biggest owner of farmland in America to make sure the food supply is controlled and limited and rolled back to create control and dependency. Anyone think that those two are not demons incarnate? Hello, it's what they are. That's why they are what they are.
Well, you're preaching to the choir because as a representative of targeted individuals that get tortured like you have no idea. People get burned, women get raped with directed energy weapons. I mean, the atrocities they do are horrible, and it's people they don't even know. So I do I hear you loud and clear. And in closing, I just wanted to ask you, what's your shield? What's your antidote for such low vibration that is everywhere?
Well, personally, I do what I can, and I'm actually quite good at it now. I've had a lot of experience, 35 years. Is I remain one step back from it, because I have this philosophy that if I can help a situation, I will help it. If I can't, I'm not going to get emotionally pulled into it. Because if I do, it's affecting me, it's bringing me down, but it's not making any difference to those involved. So I do remain as much as I can one step back, and emotionally, I mean, because if you get pulled into every situation emotionally, especially the research that I do all the time, then you're going to get absolutely emotionally fried, and you know you're not going to be long of this world. The stress will be too much. So you have to stay just this one step back, and then when you think you can make a difference, you're in there. And what you're trying to do, well, in my case, every waking minute, is to use the power of communication and information to alert as many people as possible to what's happening. So I try to remain one step back, and what that allows you to do is retain your balance and your energy, which will get drained very quickly, of course, if you get pulled into every emotional situation. So that you can make the best contribution you can in communicating this information. It was very difficult for me for a long time, because back into the 1990s, because you were talking to people who'd had the most horrendous things done to them. And you would look at little kids walking down the street and you think of what's happening to kids of that age in other places. And it was emotionally was very, very difficult, and not a little traumatic. But what you do is you learn to deal with that, so that you can work with the information without having yourself emotionally devastated. And it's something I've learned over the years. But my determination to to make a difference is completely undiminished. It's as strong now as it was in 1990 when I started out. And this is one of the things I don't understand. Um, over these decades, I've seen people come into this arena and I've seen them go. I've seen them flavor of the month for a while and then disappear, never to be heard of again. I don't understand that, because once you realize, you'll well know about this in the areas that you work in. Once you realize what's going on, walking away is impossible. You can't. And if you even tried, how can you get on with a quote normal life, knowing what the hell's happening, and not only what's happening, but where it's supposed to lead? And you're looking at the kids, and you're looking at your own kids, you're looking at your grandkids. Walking away is absolutely not an option. I'll still be doing this the day I keel over. And I can't understand those that do, but so many have, and I know from my own experience.
Thank you so much. I feel just the same way. I was pulled into, even though I was targeted for many decades, it was not until 2021 that I discovered it. And now I see it as it gave meaning to my life, because before I had a happy life, but now I have a meaningful life because we're going to shut down this program, and we're going to save a lot of people that suffer unjustly, and atrociously. So every morning, like I wake up with a desire to make this world a better one. And there's no better feeling than that. So I thank you so much.
No problem. It's been a delight to talk to you.
Eh, my honor and my pleasure. I hope we talk soon. When we bring down this program,
Oh
we
yeah,
have to meet again.
definitely a glass of red when that happens.
Yes, yes. You take care. Thank you so
You
much.
too.
Bye-bye.
Best wishes. Bye.
Bye.